Since March 2022, Sri Lanka is experiencing a severe economic crisis. There is a shortage of fuel, cooking gas, and other important goods, and inflation is very high. At the time of filming this documentary in 2019, the situation was still normal. The economic crisis is also affecting the fieldwork for the protection of elephants and people. However, CCR Sri Lanka continues to work as best as they can, even under the difficult circumstances. Dear viewers, is there a future for elephants in Sri Lanka? In a country that is developing rapidly and where space for animals is becoming increasingly scarce. The ALIYA Association and its president Beatrice Hagman firmly believe so. Beatrice went to Sri Lanka in 2019 together with a Focus Welten team. Together they have developed a presentation to show you the situation, but more than that, to show possible solutions for the elephants and the people of Sri Lanka. Because these solutions do exist, and they are encouraging. Sri Lanka is a country with very diverse wildlife and flora. The magnificent bird life, the reptiles such as monitor lizards and crocodiles, butterflies, mongooses, and many other species make many a biologist's heart beat faster. There are also endangered species, including the elephants, leopards, Sri Lanka has its own subspecies, saltwater crocodiles, sloth bears, and several monkey species. Let yourself be carried away for a moment to this pearl of the Indian Ocean and its wonderful animal world. The Asian elephant is a shy animal. Despite its size, it is usually difficult to spot. But there are places, like here along the fence at Udwalaway National Park, where you often can see them. The elephants come to the fence to beg bananas from passers-by, which are sold along the road. Sometimes, towards evening, you will be lucky enough to see elephants at one of the many water reservoirs, when they arrive for their evening bath, sometimes a whole herd. The Asian elephant is an endangered and declining species. According to the IUCN Red List, there are, according to a rough estimate, still 40,000 to 50,000 animals left, spread over just a dozen countries, within which often only a few hundred animals are left. Interestingly, Sri Lanka has about 6,000 elephants. What many people do not know, the African elephant is much more common. Although difficult to estimate, African elephants number around 400,000 individuals. This map from 2015 is divided into many small squares. In each square, 3 people were asked whether there were elephants in the area or not. The result gives the following information. There are no elephants in the red areas. Elephants live in the white areas. Green areas are forests where no people live, which means the survey could not determine whether there are elephants or not. But it is a suitable habitat for elephants. The reason that elephants are found in so many places in Sri Lanka is due to the many ancient water reservoirs or tanks located across the country known as Wevas in the Sinhala language, Kulam in the Tamil language. These were constructed for agriculture and water needs of Sri Lankans, and some of them are over 2,000 years old. At these tanks, the animals can supply themselves with water. Sri Lanka is only 1/3 larger than Switzerland. And nowhere else in Asia the density of elephants is as high as here. Elephants in Sri Lanka are not only found in protected areas. Around 70% of these animals are found outside parks and protected areas, living with people. But does this species still have a future in Sri Lanka outside the protected areas? In a country where tourism is booming and developing rapidly, building infrastructure, hotel complexes, intensifying agriculture, and so on? The ALIYA Association and the team in Sri Lanka believe so and are working on it. The elephant is the symbol of our association in the logo, and ALIYA means elephant in Sinhala. Our aim today is to show you what the future of the elephants in Sri Lanka can look like, and what we all can do to help preserve the animal's increasingly scarce habitat. Sri Lanka is in the Indian Ocean, just southeast of the southern tip of India, and only 600 kilometers from the equator. The climate is tropical and includes cool mountains up to 2,500 meters high. The famous black tea, Ceylon tea, comes mainly from these mountains. Sri Lanka, formerly Ceylon, was an important country for the trade in spices, precious stones, and especially tea. The large port of Colombo still bears witness to this fact, and its natural bay, which came into British hands in 1796, has always been used as a trading centre in pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial times. Today Colombo is a pulsating modern city. The following pictures give an impression of it. The whole nation has dedicated itself to development. An example is a Chinese-financed project. An entire city district is to be built on an artificial sand island à la Dubai. The government of Sri Lanka has launched many development projects, for example a new airport, in the middle of the most beautiful elephant country, land that is now lost to the animals. They have also built ports, highways and more. The development of infrastructure is indeed needed, but the habitat of the elephants in Sri Lanka is becoming increasingly scarce. In addition, the increasing intensification of agriculture and the development of tourism is reducing elephant habitat. Fenced-in areas such as plantations, hotels and golf courses are lost to the elephants. Roads, airports, the expansion of irrigation systems cut important passageways for animals. But it is not too late to act. The population of Sri Lanka, now more than 21 million, is well disposed towards elephants. They have been closely associated with the country's traditions and religions for over 2,000 years. Among the Hindus, Ganesh or Ganesha is a very popular deity. Among Buddhists, elephants carry temple shrines through the streets once a year in a ceremony called Perahera. The following pictures show you how rooted the elephant is in the culture and religion of Sri Lanka. In souvenir shops, in temples, on billboards, everywhere you go in Sri Lanka you see elephants. Asian elephant males are the only ones that have tusks. Females are tuskless. However, poaching for ivory over many years across Asia has driven a phenomenon of tusklessness in male Asian elephants. This is particularly marked in Sri Lanka, where today only 7% of male elephants have tusks. This means that ivory poaching is no longer the major threat to Sri Lanka's elephants, whereas it remains the main threat in other parts of Asia and Africa. In addition, tuskers, bulls with tusks, are particularly revered in Buddhism. Today, the biggest threat to the Asian elephant is habitat loss, and therefore reduced food availability. As they must share their habitat with humans, that is where conflicts between elephants and humans regularly occur. Today, Sri Lanka is the Asian country with the densest elephant population. It would be like having 3,800 free-roaming elephants walking around in Switzerland. You need to imagine that. The people who have to live with them must be listened to and taken seriously. Elephants are gourmets. If they find sugar cane or rice fields, banana plantations or that like, they love to help themselves to these nutritious delicacies. No wonder that humans and elephants, who are forced to share the habitat across much of Asia, come into conflict so often. The annual figure from 2017 shows that 84 humans and 253 elephants have fallen victim to this conflict. Today, annual numbers have increased to 113 people and 328 elephants in 2020. On our trip in 2019, we visited a village near Galgamuva, an area with many elephants. There, Sampat runs the field station of the Center for Conservation and Research, CCR. We asked him about his job in the area.
This area we doing mainly supplying the scientific information to conserve elephants to Department of Wildlife, and plus we demonstrate some model and try to implement through the government, and also try to help the people to mitigate human conflict.
Wir sind hier in einer Gegend mit vielen Konflikten. Ich fragte den Dorfbewohner Sanat, der recht gut Englisch spricht, wie es denn vorher war. Er antwortete.
Before don't have this one before 6 years. Our village are same desert. Now after 6 years, you see there are so many plants.
The farmers tried to protect themselves. They drive away emerging animals with shouts and screams, with firecrackers, or even with a gun. There are elephants that are covered with bullets or shotgun pellets. If the desperation is great, sometimes food bombs are placed, a very nasty thing that blows up the animal's jaws. They often starve to death. The problem was that the more elephants were driven away in this way, the more aggressive they became. The result, the conflict got worse. Solutions are needed. No one wants to harm elephants or even kill them. Farmers just want to be able to live safely and grow their crops without losing them to elephants. According to a survey by CCR, only 3 out of 894 respondents would accept the option to kill elephants to get rid of the problem. That they need help and that something must be done is known to everyone, including the government, but something sustainable has not yet emerged. The Center for Conservation and Research in Sri Lanka says it quite clearly. Only by protecting the people do the elephants have any chance of surviving outside the parks. Inside the parks they will be fine. But the 7% outside are an extremely valuable population for species conservation. In the past, the solution was thought to be to bring the animals into protected areas and lock them up there behind fences. And there have been repeated attempts by the government to do just that. But this does not work, for 2 reasons. First, there are already too many elephants in certain protected areas. Elephants in Yala National Park, for example, are in a nutritionally worse state of health than those outside the park. Young animals also die more frequently. They are particularly at risk during the period of weaning from their mother's milk at around 5 years of age, and there are fewer animals per adult in Yala than outside the park. Second, elephants cannot necessarily be stopped by fences. Effective elephant-proof fencing needs to be very sturdy indeed and constantly controlled and maintained. Unfortunately, this is not the case with fences constructed by the state. Elephants break through again and again, as you see here in the picture with a state-built fence. Elephants learn quickly. Wood does not conduct electricity, so they just grab the post and tear it out. Today, the CCR says, we need to reverse the situation. Instead of protecting the elephants and keeping them away from people, which has never really worked, they are now trying to protect people in their villages and their crops. And lo and behold, done right, it works, as the CCR team has found out. It is CCR's great achievement to have gathered a lot of knowledge and to have tried out models and possibilities over the years until they worked. This success story will be reported on here. We already met Sampat earlier. He is the head of the CCR research station in Galgamuva. In autumn 2019, the team traveled with him to a village that contacted the CCR about 6 years ago because it had big elephant problems. Sanat, a villager, spoke quite good English. He told us that fortunately nobody had been killed. But was there any other damage, maybe to houses?
Yes, my house 4 times is broken before this one. May 2013 and 2007, 2004, 2007. After I am going outside, that time also 2 times my grandmother are tell to me.
Wie viele Familien sind denn jetzt geschützt durch den Zaun?
16 to 16.
16 people.
No. People.
Families.
Yeah, family. More than 15 people.
People approached CCR for help after houses were destroyed again and again. The village is flourishing today. Banana plants and vegetables grow around the houses, and there are flower gardens and seating areas. The gate is opened in the morning and stays open until 4 p.m. Then it is closed again for the evening and night. The elephants only come in the evening. The animals respect the fence. If they get too close, they receive an electric shock, weak enough not to hurt or kill them, but strong enough to make them think twice about trying again, which they usually don't do a second time. Since then, calm has returned, and there are no more incidents. The inhabitants, the 16 families mentioned, live in safety. The example of this village will be used here to show what it takes to build a sustainably functioning fence. After the request to CCR about 6 years ago, the CCR talked to the villagers. The first question was, which families would participate in building a village fence? Who would be willing to tackle such a community project? 16 families agreed. 2 brothers said that the government had promised to do something and they did not want to participate because the government would do it for free. They are still waiting today. There's no trace of gardens around their houses. Since 16 families were willing to find a fence solution together with the CCR, they all sat down together. The villagers were given the task of forming an association, including a president and a person responsible for the finances. In fact, the village association gets 75 to 85% of fence costs sponsored, thus most of it. But they also must contribute. First, they need to contribute the remaining 15 to 25% of fence costs not covered by the CCR. Their contribution is based on the size of their property. Only in this way do they feel that it is their fence, and they care for it accordingly. Second, the association agrees on a regular maintenance. The fence must be checked, and grass and bushes need to be cut along the fence. Third, the association opens a bank account, and each family must agree to pay a monthly contribution according to their area protected. The fence maintenance is paid from this fund, such as a new battery. These are small amounts and affordable for the community. Fourth, the fence is built by the villagers themselves, under CCR supervision and guidance. This is all explained to the residents. Then there is also the question of where the village fence should be located. Next, the families must decide. Do they want to protect a little more land and garden and pay a little more for it, or keep the garden small and contribute less? This is a very sensible consideration. They realize what is important and necessary for them. If everything was simply a gift, it would be very inviting to fence a few more acres. The village lives well with it. The fence is a success. CCR has supervised the building of a total of 16 village fences in Galgamuva, and they are working very well. In the first year after construction, the fences are checked weekly and subsequently once a month. If they fail due to a defect and no electricity flows through the wires, then it's only a matter of time before the elephants are back. The fence must function reliably. Elephants learn quickly. Not only the villages have to be protected, also the cultivated fields. Fields in Sri Lanka are only cultivated for 3 to a maximum of 6 months of the year. So why not build the fences in such a way that the elephants can use the fields after the harvest? After some test runs, a fence was developed that works. It can be put up and taken down in a few hours. It is easy to transport. It is stored in the village until the next cultivation season. Metal poles are stuck in a specially developed insulation tube in the ground. The conductive metal poles prevent the elephants from simply pulling the poles out with their intelligence and skillfulness. The batteries of these fences are powered by solar energy. Observations show sometimes as early as 20 minutes after a temporary fence is completely dismantled, the elephants come to the fields. The crop residues and the grass that grows back later is a welcome food supplement for them. And just as important, they can move freely in the area again. The space is available to them again. And elephant dung deposited in the fallow fields while the elephants are feeding enrich the soil for the following year's crops. It may sound unappealing to promote fences as a solution to the elephant problem, but these fences mean freedom. Freedom for people to move around the village undisturbed and sleep in safety, but also freedom for elephants to roam around without being constantly attacked. The village fences have clearly reduced the aggressive behavior of the elephants. The temporary fences around the fields give the people protection from drastic crop damage. And for the elephants, they maintain their important habitat for a large part of the year. Only in this way will the important Sri Lanka's elephant population have a future outside protected areas. Preserving these harvested fields for them is one of the ways to counteract the dramatic loss of habitat for the animals since independence in 1948. Finally, we take a look into the future and introduce you to CCR team, the people who have been doing great work in species conservation in Sri Lanka for many years. We start with a very important person in this organization. She is a Swiss woman who studied biology in Zurich and has been living in Sri Lanka for 16 years. Her name is Jennifer Pastorini. We asked her how it came about that she now lives in Sri Lanka and that elephants have become her work. The answer was love.
Jenny, du hast in Zürich studiert. Wie kommt es denn, dass du seit vielen Jahren in Sri Lanka lebst und mit Elefanten schaffst? Wie ist das gekommen?
Das war eigentlich mehr ein Zufall. Ich habe nach meiner Doktorarbeit an der Uni Zürich ein Postdoc in Amerika gemacht, in New York. Und dort habe ich Genetik von Lemuren gemacht, bin also im Labor. Und Bruto, mein damals zukünftiger Mann, war auch in diesem Labor und hat auch Genetik gemacht, allerdings eher an Elefanten. Und ja, er ist dann zurück auf Sri Lanka und ich habe dann irgendwann entschieden, dass ich das auch mache und bin ihm gefolgt und bin nach Sri Lanka gekommen in 2004 und ja, bin dann einfach da hängen geblieben.
Jenny and her husband Prithviraj Fernando, or Brutu for short, live in a house in the south of the country, near the well-known Yala National Park. The house is not only the CCR headquarters, but also a research station. Also in this area, many elephants live outside the parks. The two of them, Brutu and Jenny, are the guarantors of the scientific basis of their work. There is one aspect of their scientific work that is so important in practice that Brutu Fernando will tell you about it. He explains why it is so important to collar elephants. These collars continuously collect the geographical location of the elephant wearing it, using a GPS system.
By putting a GPS collar on an elephant, we can find out where the elephant goes and what it does. So that information is useful for very many things. For example, when we looked at translocation, we have been doing translocation for decades, and we always catch the elephant and go and put him somewhere and believe everything is fine. And that we have been doing in Sri Lanka for maybe 20-30 years. But then we put a collar on the elephant, and then we found some of them actually walk back across maybe 100 or 200 kilometers to where they were captured. Or they go into a new area and start problems there. So then we actually were able to look at it and understand how elephants respond to this management and what they do. And then also, if we track, let's say, some herds, and then there is a development project that is going to be done in that area. So we can tell them these particular areas are heavily used by elephants. So maybe it's a good idea not to develop those areas, leave aside those areas, but these areas are not used that intensively. So maybe you could use those areas for development. Or the elephants really need this corridor to move from this area to this area, so you should not obstruct that. So like that, if we have the information, we can guide development and we can guide conservation.
Not only is this knowledge important in the context of development projects, but it is also important to see where important corridors are that should be left open for elephants to move from one area to another. So collaring is a very important tool for animal conservation and management.
Also jetzt auf dieser Karte da haben wir Daten von 3 verschiedenen Elefanten, von 2 Weibchen, wo das Halsband nicht mehr geht.
Jenny's work consists largely of analyzing this GPS data and making maps showing where the elephants are found and how the herds move. These maps can then be used in negotiations with the government or for construction projects. There is a difference between assuming that elephants live in an area or being able to prove it. Jennifer and Pruttu do not work alone. The team in the south of the country also includes Bandara observes elephants in and around parks and describes where which elephant is at a given moment. He also takes data on animal health. He has been working for CCR for more than 15 years. He knows the elephants in that area very well. Channa is the villagers' and farmers' contact person. He listens to their concerns and regularly checks the fences erected in the area. At the beginning weekly, after a year only every month. Janaka tracks the collared elephants. Once a female elephant has been collared, the whole herd can be monitored. Since waste dumps in Sri Lanka, where mostly bulls consumed garbage before, have now been fenced off, he also observes what these elephants are now doing, because they must look for food elsewhere. The potential for new conflicts is great. The Galgamuva team is led by Sampat. He is a well-known, respected and very important person for the farmers in the area, but also for the CCR. He has been doing great things for many years, and the fact that human-elephant conflicts have lessened significantly in this area is largely due to his dedication and prudent leadership. Sampat's wife, Anoma, also works for the CCR. She records all the data from the controlled fences. She also takes care of the physical well-being of the team at the field station. She is, in fact, an excellent cook. Galgamuva is a field station. This is also where the fencing material is prepared and stored. Here you see Danasiri at work. Danasiri carries out variety of tasks. In the morning he works in the workshop. This work is supported by Ajit and Sarat, a technician and his helper. In the afternoon, Danasiri works in the field. He used to be a hunter, so he knows the area like the back of his hand. As a good tracker, he worked with Prutu Fernando even before the CCR was officially founded, and he is still involved today. So he goes out every day, today no longer with a rifle but with a camera, to track down the elephants and to get a picture of them. He or Sampat gets the information about where to find the elephants from acquaintances by phone. People know them in the area and are happy to call them if elephants are nearby. The elephants are photographed to identify them later based on the photos. This way it can be determined when the animals are where and in what state of health. We were allowed to accompany Danasiri, and it was really an experience. There is another person working for the CCR, a person who works on the future, Jaya Singha. To describe his work, we need to elaborate a little. Galgamuva and the fences, created with support of the CCR, have shown that the approach works. The problem is, around 50,000 families are affected. The team cannot provide counseling and care for these many families. The goal now is to make the model known in other districts. Maybe the system could be handed over to the government. This is exactly what Jaya Singha is working for. Every week he organizes and holds lectures that show what a future for elephants and people can look like. We were allowed to attend one such event where Pruttu and Sampat also spoke. After the lecture, the district leaders can go to their villages and talk to the people themselves. If they are willing to participate, workshops are organized in which the CCR knowledge is passed on to the district leaders. So everything is well on track. But the need is great. There are so many villages in the north that are still far away from the knowledge and possibilities offered by the CCR. There, the goal is to support villages with village fences and temporary fences as a model. Because only if you can show, look, it works, look how people can now live in peace and plant gardens again, look, they no longer have crop damage, only then can the government be convinced to join in and adopt the system. So we are grateful for support to finance such model fences. 1 kilometer of village fence costs about $3,500 and about $1,500 for 1 kilometer of temporary fence. The total costs depend on the length, location and position of the fence. A temporary fence quickly comes to $5,000 and for a village fence you must reckon with $10,000. Then there are other costs. The organization needs to finance its team. It costs around $100,000 a year just to pay the salaries and finance the transport. But the whole thing is worth it. The reward for this investment and all the work involved is the safety of many people and a future for Sri Lanka's elephants. They will no longer be attacked by guns, firecrackers, snare traps, or the horrible feed bombs. It is the CCR team that is leading the way to a more peaceful future.